All right. So, hello and welcome to UAEM North America's Campaign Showcase. My name is Justin Mendoza. I'm the Executive Director for Universities Allied for Essential Medicines North America, and we'll talk a little bit more about UAEM in the next couple of moments. So, first to get things started, if you saw the ad that's on the screen, if you saw a message over your email and you joined this call because you wanted to hear more about UAEM's work in North America, what we're doing now, and opportunities to get involved at any level, you're in the right spot. So congrats, thanks for joining. It's good to see you. Up here on the screen, you can find all of our social media handles. We're testing out Threads. Who knows how long that lasts? But we're also on Instagram, Facebook, and for now, Twitter. Again, who knows how long that lasts? But here we are, and we're excited to connect with you all on those platforms as well. So today we've got a quick welcome. This is part of it. I'm also going to quickly orient folks to UAEM in case this is your first time really coming to a UAEM call or an event, and then we'll go from there. And then we'll jump into an introduction from me. Then I'll move into strategy. We'll talk a little bit more to hear from some of the student leaders and recent alumni leaders who are on the call right now to hear about the projects that UAEM is working on right now across North America. And then we'll talk about ways you can get involved and things that you can do to help us further the mission and advance the cause. So first and foremost, cool. I will start with a quick introduction. So as I mentioned before, my name is Justin Mendoza. I'm our new executive director as of April 2023. But this certainly isn't my first time working with UAEM. Many of you know that, in fact, if you've known me from before, even outside of UAEM context, I think I've probably talked your ear off about this organization, Access Medicines. So that's certainly how Taylor knows me, so that's fun. But UAEM for me has been a part of my career since I was an undergraduate student at Central Michigan University. The flying C logo that you see on your screen representing that. And those are some photos from the first conference I went to and when our student chapter won an award, which was an exciting moment as an undergrad. Then I went on to study public health, focused in healthcare policy and regulatory affairs, and really essentially wrote my capstone project on how to make medicines affordable using existing laws. For the Access to Medicines nerds on the call, those laws just being the US Bayh-Dole Act and how it could use that to enforce reasonable pricing terms when it comes to prescription drug prices, which is the current political topic. It's fascinating to see your master's thesis, well, capstone, close enough, turn into a real life conversation. But since then, after graduating, I've worked in community organizing, government relations, and coalition building for a number of organizations focused on consumer healthcare, prescription drug pricing, and public health response during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I've testified before Congress. I've, put together and organized rallies, built organizations, raised money, and now, and also last year even ran for public office. And so coming into this, for me, UAEM has always been a kind of thread since undergrad in this fight and in this work. And the reason I raise this isn't only so that I can introduce myself to you all, since some of you I haven't met before, but also because I've seen this organization from just about every angle, from an undergraduate student member to a grad student to a student leader running a chapter to a national member of what we call our coordinating committee to a board member, and for a very brief moment of time, also the president of the board of directors. So I've seen this from a governance, from a participation, and now from a staff level. And so thinking about that for you all, I'm just happy to chat about how to get involved in any whatever level fits for you as a part of what UAEM is up to. Before I jump into that slide, I will say I'm going to quickly show us this slide, which will walk us through just a really quick background on UAEM's history. I'm not going to read you all of the points here, but really going way back to when we started. The first thing that brought UAEM into the mix was a battle over this compound that's on the screen. It's stavridine D4T, It's one of the treatments used in early HIV/AIDS cocktails to treat the disease. And as you can see, it was synthesized in 1966 and nearly 30 years later approved by the US FDA. And the really key thing here is it was developed by a scientist at the National Cancer Institute. Well, sorry, the Karmanos Cancer Institute, which is part of the National Cancer Institute, and then was patented by Yale University, a university here in the United States. Throughout this, receiving funding from the National Institutes of Health and from other publicly funded resources to actually develop this HIV/AIDS treatment. Which brings us to the problem. In 2001, it was more than $10,000 per patient per year in South Africa. And it was an incredibly expensive treatment, right, at the time. I mean, now $10,000 per patient per year doesn't even make it on the top 50 most expensive drugs, right, since they're so expensive. But at the time, in 2001 dollars, this is an incredibly expensive treatment. In fact, it's at a price point where most officials in the US had actually ruled out treating HIV in low and middle income countries around the world. This is a couple years before PEPFAR was started under the Bush administration, which actually aimed to address HIV/AIDS access and treatment worldwide. But this is before that. This is when there are no programs in place and when folks are really kind of looking to global leaders for what they can do. At that time, Doctors Without Borders, abbreviated here as MSF for Medicine Sans Frontieres, and other organizations, including the Treatment Action Campaign, really were trying to lower those prices, trying to combat this notion that it was unaffordable to treat HIV/AIDS in low and middle income countries around the world, and pushing back incredibly hard. Here, actually, in the photos, we have, I believe it's one of the organizers, actually, I think former director for Treatment Action Campaign with Nelson Mandela, who I think needs no introduction or conversation, but of course, at this time was the president of South Africa. And so really pushing forward this conversation and trying to move things. And that slide's not supposed to be in here, either are those. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of this notion. I normally have a very cool slide, which I somehow deleted from the slide deck. Wonderful. Well, I'm glad that's being recorded. All right, so this really cool slide normally shows us that what happened at Yale is following this HIV treatment being so expensive, organizers on Yale's campus combined with advocates from all of the global health community that we just heard about, Doctors Without Borders and others, came together and started talking about this prescription drug price being so expensive and the fact that Yale still owned the patent on that drug. Yale had allowed a monopoly to be formed by Bristol Myers Squibb to produce that drug and to sell it at that $10,000 per patient per year price. And the short version of the story is that the students involved on campus who organized in their network and were able to reach the original researchers at Yale who worked on the medicine, were able to put pressure up and actually push the university to change its internal policies and allow for that drug to be licensed to a generic manufacturer. Now, I'm not talking about giving it away for free. It wasn't a gift. What they did was they literally changed the deal so that they could make a small payment off of every version of the drug sold by another company at a lower cost. That other company ended up actually pricing the drug at just $1 per patient per day. So it's $350, close enough, which they were able to then lower the cost of HIV medicines virtually overnight. And by a decade later, when we kind of stopped using Stavridine, because there are safer, better alternatives on the market, the price of that had actually dropped down to $60 per patient per year. So the cost of treating HIV went from 10 grand to $60, in part driven by student activism on Yale's campus to pressure them to change that deal. And UAEM was born out of this idea that students can change the way that universities interact with intellectual property, that students can change how universities think about their global impact on healthcare crises that happen today. And we've focused our attention on building policies and approaches that don't make us go one drug at a time, one university at a time. So that all being said, you might ask, how the heck do you do that? Well, UAEM focuses really our entire strategy on strategic pillars, which you'll see laid out across the top of each of the projects that my student and alumni leaders will talk about in just a couple minutes. And those three are access, innovation, and empowerment. Access is pretty standard, right? That story of D4T was about access to HIV drugs. We try to replicate that. We try to change policies so that universities make sure that there are affordable alternatives on the market, or that there are other mechanisms in place that make sure that patients can ultimately get the drugs that they need. Innovation is really about trying to influence the way that research is done, to make sure that it's transparent, that it's open, that you can find clinical trial data on the websites that's supposed to exist on, and also to make sure that universities and other research institutions are focused on things that aren't necessarily profitable, like neglected tropical diseases or other disease states that might only affect low-income populations. And then finally, the empowerment part. Because student voices are critical, the empowerment portion for us is about helping people see that they can actually do something today, rather than just waiting to graduate before they take action. And that's the reason, that key component, I think, is a critical part of why I'm here, and a critical part of why a lot of folks are on this call. So it's a really, really key piece to us. And then finally, we have a fourth pillar around sustainability, which is another reason why I'm on this call, and also talking with so many folks and trying to build up our board of directors for this next round, which we'll talk about a bit as well, which is that we need to build a sustainable version of UAEM. Sometimes it takes a decade for a university to actually get to the point where they're signing a contract with a drug maker. And even if they promised us 10 years before that they'd make that drug affordable, without a chapter or without UAEM, how do we even hold them accountable? So sustainability is a critical part of our work, and something that we're working on in a number of ways. I won't preview that too much because that would just be foreshadowing, and I'm currently in solidarity with Writers Guild being on strike. I'm just kidding. But I am. But anyway, we'll move first to our projects, and I'm going to first hand it over to Avani, because I know that you have to step away. But if you could start by introducing yourself, and then I'll advance the slides for you.
Of course, thank you, Justin. Hi, everyone. My name's Avani. I've been working with UAM on the CC for the past 2 years, but initially started working with the UCLA UAM chapter back in 2019, which Stefna, one of our other incredible CC members, literally founded the chapter. And I was so fortunate to be able to, join the UCLA chapter and learn so much about it, become so active in it. And I will explain where my strengths lie, particularly. Yes, Justin, sorry. CC stands for Coordinating Committee. Thank you for explaining that. But yeah, so specifically this past year, me, along with 3 other CC members, have been heavily focused on the Empowerment Committee and essentially rebranding our entire meaning of what it is to be a UAM chapter. And this is basically a more tangible version of seeing Pillar 3, empowerment, like Justin explained, of our strategic plan. So we can jump right into the slides real quickly. So currently we have 15 existing established North American chapters, and these are ones who are active, still we engage with them on a day-to-day basis. Obviously we've had so many over the years, but since we've revamped and reestablished the standards for being a UAM chapter, we are very particular about the universities that get to use UAM and make sure that their universities are actually compliant with the guidelines that we set forth, and making sure that any research made on their campus is accessible and affordable to everyone. And I also want to shout out 2 chapters that are on the call today, the JHU chapter, and we also have the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine chapter. I want to shout out a couple of the members there. I think Hannah's on the call, Isioma, and Akshata. So quick shout out to them. Just goes to show that the student leaders that we do pick and highlight to be a part of our chapters, they are very driven, and they do show up, and the work that they do is so crucial to who we are as UAM, and especially, creating university level change, which obviously is the entire point of empowerment, right? We're trying to leverage student voices to enact university level change. And especially being on college campuses, they hold the most power. So getting students to realize, their voice and their power as students at all of these universities is very key to us. I'm going to highlight kind of a little more in particular about the process that we're taking with our chapters. Next slide real quick, Justin, with the roadmap. One more slide, please. So we split everything into 3 main phases, right? So everyone, let's say we got like a random email from a chapter saying, hey, like, I want to know what UAM is. I've seen you guys in the news. Like, what do I do? Like, how do I get involved, right? And that is phase 1, where we kind of induct them into UAM with a couple of introduction meetings, trying to gauge, their interest, their background. Are they open to starting a chapter, or are there other ways for them to be engaged, right? Like, do they want to, maybe join another existing chapter if going to like grad school or something, or if they want to, just join like a separate campaign, like things like that. There's so many ways to get involved, and we obviously want to expand our base, and obviously access to medicines is a worldwide issue. So there is always a point in the line for everyone to get involved. So that's kind of step 1. And obviously, as we understand their level of engagement and everything, we kind of move on to meeting 2 of phase 1, where they kind of get inducted into, okay, here's everything UAM 101. Here are all the campaigns we have available. What is the next step for you at your university to start your chapter? And we have incredible guides that we've made. We have literally troubleshooting guides that literally go from like day 1, okay, how do I get other board members involved, all the way to like, okay, we have a chapter, what do we do with them, right? Like, we have everything kind of nailed down, and that's kind of what we build upon in phase 2 specifically, where we essentially want every single chapter to have 2 kind of goals that they're achieving, right, throughout the course of every academic year. One is a chapter specific goal, and one is a national level goal. The national level goal is going to highlight a few of the other campaigns that my fellow CC members will be highlighting later this evening. So I'm not going to ruin the surprise for you guys. But it's a national level campaign, because obviously as a UAM chapter, you want to make sure you are advancing UAM's goals and our ideals for the year. And then a chapter specific one is anywhere from, strengthening your chapter, right? Whether that's through social bonding, creating a panel on campus, right? You want to engage your student body. That way you're able to have more power to leverage when you're essentially going to your TTO's office at the end of the day. And obviously phase 3 is kind of split into 2 parts. Obviously, we want to take into account the fact that there is a turnover, right? Like, seniors will be graduating, and we want, dedicated members, juniors, sophomores, freshmen to like take over and make sure they're able to handle that. So we take that into account in phase 3, specifically to ensure that there is that smooth transition and movement smooth transition and movement between graduating chapters and incoming leaders, so to speak. And what's really cool is a lot of the times the graduating seniors, they do want to obviously still become involved in UAM. So they end up on the CC. Case in point, one of them is me. But yeah, it just goes to show that once you're committed to UAM, you're in it all the way. At least I can speak for myself and the incredible CC members I've had the pleasure of working with over the past 2 years. Yeah, that's my little spiel about the Empowerment Committee. And yes, as Justin mentioned, if you guys know of anyone who's involved, literally your next door neighbor, anyone, feel free to like shoot us an email, and we will put them in contact. And at the end of the day, it's like every single person that you meet, like whether or not they know it, they can become involved in UAM, right? Like, I feel like at the core of it, like, who is against like having low drug prices, right? Like, who is against like having to have reasonable and ethical guidelines, right, for having access to medicines and things like that. So you can connect with anyone about this, and I will passionately go on and on about this, but I'm going to give the floor to my fellow CC members. I think Megan, you're up next. Go for it.
Excellent. And I just wanted to throw in one point as we transition over, and also just thank you so much, Avani, for jumping in and presenting and taking your time with us. I know you have a busy evening with work and other things balancing, so it's awesome that you took the time today. But just wanted to share, what makes this unique is, if you compare this to other student organizations, a lot of folks just kind of give you a brand, a document, and send you on your merry way. UAM is really trying to build a structure and really reinforce and help make sure that our student leaders are given the skills and the goals and the structure to succeed as they build and try to fight some of the most powerful forces in not only politics but on campus. So it's an exciting, awesome way to get involved. And truly is a value add that we take a lot of pride in, that we can actually build things like these 3-phase chapter building programs and our advocacy trainings and more. So super exciting, and thank you so much for highlighting it. So yeah, I'll pass it to Megan. Start with introducing yourself and then jump right in.
Awesome. Thanks, Avni. So I went to UC Berkeley for my undergrad, and I was studying molecular biology. And during that time, I was part of a research lab, and everyone on campus was talking about these groundbreaking gene editing therapies with CRISPR technologies, which have won Nobel Prizes, and there's not as much discussion about access for those therapies. And I started in 2019 with UAEM because I was really motivated by student advocacy and being able to work as a student in, I guess, a discipline beyond what an average student might do. So I initially started working with my university, and I can talk more about that on the next slide. But currently, as a CC member, I joined last year on the clinical trials transparency team. And essentially, we are working to improve compliance with federal results reporting law for clinical trials. So there's this amendment from 2007, essentially mandating that all publicly funded clinical trials need to submit results in a timely manner. And so this is to ensure physician and patient access to information for health and safety, as well as, what's the value for a particular drug in terms of price when there's no alternatives. And there isn't quite the clinical benefit data out there to support patient use. So that's kind of the background of our campaign. And also there's thousands of trials that have not submitted results to the clinicaltrials.gov database, which is very troubling for patient safety. And yet the FDA, which is the primary regulatory body, has not levied any fines against non-compliant trial sponsors. So there are some different avenues we've pursued, specifically with 2 reports that we came out with, one in 2019 and then another in 2021, studying university compliance with the law. Because universities are also a central hub for clinical trials. And we found that after our study from 2019, there was actually an increase in compliance with the law in 2021. So it kind of goes to show that creating awareness around issues can also result in improved compliance and responsibility. Another facet of our work is working with Columbia Law School's Science, Health, and Information Clinic, and they are a pro bono student-run clinic that operates on a semester basis, and they've been wonderful to help us with different Freedom of Information Act requests. So essentially, you can petition for confidential correspondence between different government agencies like the NIH and FDA with trial sponsors, to essentially study how the law is being enforced and where there might be deficiencies in compliance. So that's been a very useful way that we've been able to understand where there has been enforcement and areas for improvement. And through using those documents, we created a formal citizen petition. And so this citizen petition essentially requires the FDA to respond within a set amount of time. And that date is August 26th. And the petition has several core tenets, one being a public database for pre-notice publication. So pre-notices are sent to non-compliant trial sponsors if they haven't submitted results, and it's essentially trying to create results reporting within a timely manner. And if those trial sponsors don't submit results within that time, then they'll receive a notice of non-compliance 30 days later. And then after that, they can potentially have fines. But there's never been any case where they've received fines from the FDA because these notices are so successful in creating compliance, but there's just very few of them that are sent out to trial sponsors. So again, the point is to increase the number of pre-notices that are sent through having this public database of pre-notices, because right now it's not public information. The other thing that we've done is created a prioritization framework within the citizen petition to try to create a system for the FDA to put resources in the right places, specifically within such a big organization. They don't have the resources, so they say, to dedicate enough time to sending notices of non-compliance to trials, unless there are like, you know, certain, I guess, concerns for patient safety. But right now it seems unspecific, so we're hoping to increase specificity and patient safety for these regulations. Yeah, and then essentially just improving transparency around results reporting to clinicaltrials.gov. Yeah, sorry if that was a long tangent. We're also working with congressional offices for letters of support for our petition to try to create awareness. And moving forward, we've also started working with representatives from the WHO who study clinical trial results reporting to an international database. And this is kind of more so a program that has all different countries submitting results to the WHO, including the US. So we've been working with them to try and study ways to improve results reporting within the North American context, and also potentially collaborate moving forward in other ways. Beyond that, we're starting to look into further university compliance issues with a professor at Johns Hopkins University. So we're hoping to collaborate with a toolkit that he's established. So yeah, and then there's also Canada clinical trials work, and I believe there was a report card around that. So apologies if that was a long tangent, and I also wanted to let Ted introduce himself. He's also been a wonderful lead on this campaign as well, helping over the last year.
Thanks, Megan. Hello, everybody. My name is Ted Malpass. As Megan said, I've been co-leading the Clinical Trials Transparency campaign with her. And that has been, really a kind of great way to interact with policy, to approach kind of at a federal level, and also like being able to learn skills and tools to track, your individual universities, adherence to both clinical trial submission and also just, their stance on these things. I've been a member of UAEM for a year and a half, with being a part of the coordinating committee for around the same time. And UAM has kind of been a great way for me to interact as a patient advocate, and learn a lot of the things that affect the way that I, deal with my disease, as well as working with the tools to understand and how to positively impact some of the barriers that I deal with as a patient. And that's one thing as clinical trials transparency has been great for, is that, it showed me a way to different kinds of databases and tools and skill sets to look at the drugs that I might have to take as a type 1 diabetic, and really understand this, what is the efficacy of this thing? Have the sponsors in the trials, like, are they trying to adhere to something that is very important with the clinical trials results being posted and made public to somebody like me and to my doctors and to everybody else? So it's been a wonderful campaign to work on, as well as everything else, and working with the great team at UAM as well. It's a really motivated and positive team on there. Yeah, and I'm sure there's another campaign that'll come up, and each and all of these campaigns really tie in well together. So it's been great to see different sides of issues that I might not have been exposed to before I joined UAM.
Wonderful. I'm glad you're both here to speak to this experience and jump in. I'll go ahead and move us to the next one, which I think is also Megan.
Great, thanks. All right, I'll try and get through this. Sorry if I took too much time on the last one. But yeah, we're very passionate about these issues. So we hope to see some of you join our team. So essentially, the Affordable Access Plan has been a great passion of mine. But I, learned so much from students at UCLA who started the plan. along with the Medicines Patent Pool. They're a great nonprofit organization working to increase, drug licensing equity provisions at universities. So this plan was established around a drug called Xtandi at UCLA. I'm not a UCLA student, so I feel bad talking about this because we have quite a few on the call. But essentially, Xtandi was a drug that was for prostate cancer, and it was incredibly expensive for patients, both in the US and abroad. And a large issue arose when there was Indian generic production, which went against, international patent policy. But at the same time, the UCLA University came in and tried to prevent this affordable version from being available to patients, which was really devastating. And essentially, our advocacy at UCLA among our great students has resulted in a more affordable version being allowed to be produced in India, and also more affordable pricing within the US. I think that is the correct timeline of things, so anyone can correct me if I'm wrong around Xtandi, because we have some great experts on the call. As a product of Xtandi, there was also conversations about future affordability at UCLA, principally around this affordable access plan, which is a drug licensing provision. So essentially, a university owns a patent for a drug, and then they can license this drug to a commercial partner for delivery to a market. And so this could be domestically or internationally. And this plan actually requires preemptive tools to be in place for access in low and middle income countries. And I initially was very motivated to implement the plan at Berkeley, where I went for my undergrad after hearing about its success at UCLA for all medical technologies. So after speaking with several advocates from UCLA, I started working with my administration. And of course, you always have some pushback. I started back in 2020, right during the pandemic, asking my university if they'd be interested to adopt this policy, and they weren't. And so it took a lot of advocacy, attending regents meetings, essentially board meetings of the entire University of California system, making public comments there, and also coordinating throughout the system with other students at UCLA, UC Santa Cruz, shouting out TED, to essentially create awareness for the need for affordable access licensing provisions. And after all of these efforts and meeting with my chancellor, we were able to get the plan in place for all medical technologies at UC Berkeley, both in low and middle income countries and also domestically for low income patients. And so that's also an avenue within UAEM I think we've been working more towards, is creating this domestic access space, because that's usually a very taboo topic. And I also wouldn't have been able to do this work without the support from Andrew Goldman and Dr. Reshma Ramachandran, who really worked to support this plan and support students. So I just want to say it's this interdisciplinary work and expertise that really helps students get to where they hope to be in supporting advocacy initiatives. So I really love this plan, and it's starting to spread throughout the whole UC system, as well as other schools such as Yale. And I think even more, I was contacted by a German university, so it just keeps going, and it's really great to see. So I hope you all learn a little bit more about this plan and how it's amenable to your university. And I'll stop there. If anyone wants to shout out anything else, go ahead.
Wonderful. I think we'll move right along to our next one, and then I think in the intro, Sapna, who is our next speaker from the team, may have a little bit more to add on from the UCLA perspective, but maybe also not. No pressure. But yeah, definitely a huge, huge project that we're all incredibly excited about with the Affordable Access Plan. So, Sapna, I'll move it to you.
Awesome. Well, to introduce myself first, hi, my name's Sapna. I use she, her pronouns. I joined UAM back in 2019, kind of around hearing about Xtandi, which is the medication that Megan was just talking about, and did a fantastic job of kind of talking about the pricing of it and how unaffordable it was. But after hearing about Xtandi, I think that was a huge wake-up call for me. I was a freshman in college at UCLA. And it was really interesting to hear about this medication developed on our campus, UCLA, with public funding and just completely unaffordable to so many people. So that's kind of what got me involved in UAM. And in the fall of 2019, which was my sophomore year, some friends and I started the UAM UCLA chapter, which is still going strong. So really, really exciting. I graduated UCLA in 2021, and I've been working in a research lab at UCLA since, and I'm going to med school in the fall. And I've been part of the CC since 2020, so the last 3 years. And UAM has just been such a formative experience, and I'm excited to stay with it. So yeah, so I can talk a little bit about the report card, which is the project you see on the screen here. So notably, we have 2 different report cards, and it's been a project that's been ongoing at UAM for many, many years. But the report card, we have a US one and then the Canadian one. The US one you can find at globalhealthgrades.org. The Canadian one, which is more recent because we published this past year, that is on, you can find that on the link in the slideshow here. And so the report card's a really unique project. I think it's a really cool advocacy tool because the whole point of it is kind of, it's very tongue-in-cheek, this idea that we are always evaluated by universities, and this project kind of allows us to evaluate the university and give them a grade on how their biomedical health research is conducted. So specifically, we look at 5 different domains. Access, thinking about some of those access licensing policies that Megan mentioned. Do universities have those sort of licensing languages in place, and are they adhering to them? We have this domain of innovation, thinking about, you know, how much money and funding is put towards neglected disease or neglected health conditions in that research. Empowerment is thinking about, you know, global health centers and how much funding and effort goes towards growing the next generation of global health leaders. Transparency, kind of what Megan was talking about earlier, how universities are at reporting clinical trials data. And then the last part is COVID-19 response, and thinking about different licensing and different policies that universities adhered to during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. So those are kind of different branches of what this report card is looking at. And specifically in the US report card, we looked at the top 60 US universities in terms of how much funding they were receiving, public funding. And then with the Canadian one, which you can see on the screen here, is we looked at the top 15 research universities in Canada, or the U15. And as you can also see, the average grade is a D when you look at all of these different domains together. So clearly this report card tool is used to show that universities, you know, they're doing some things well, but by and large, they have a lot more steps that they can take in the right direction, whether it's through putting more funding towards research topics that are often neglected, or different licensing strategies. So that's kind of what the report card aims to do. And it's a great tool because at least at UCLA, I know at Georgetown, other universities in both the US and in Canada, we've been able to use this tool as a way to start conversations with technology transfer offices, or the groups at universities that are kind of in charge of making these decisions. And it's a great way to kind of compare universities against each other. And that's always great for both good and bad press. And so, yeah, that is a little bit about the report card. If there's anything else anyone wants to add, please feel free. But yeah, it's a great tool, and I strongly recommend checking it out.
Definitely. It's one of the most exciting tools too to look through and kind of look at your alma mater, your current university, and just kind of see what it looks like, what things are going on. The thing that I always love to point out as well is that this is actually going to be the year that we're revisiting the North America or the US report card specifically. For folks who are looking at it from a membership perspective of how can I get involved in this, it's exciting. For folks who are alums, who are potential board members, even just outside folks who are thinking about universities and their performance in these areas, we'd love your feedback and intentionality on this as well, to think about this next phase, because this is the first post this is the first post COVID-19 crisis report card we put out, because the data from the 2023 Canadian report card was actually from 2020 and 2021. 2019 and 2020 actually. So it's an exciting new moment to take a look at where university's at in all of these domains today. Awesome. So the only project I wanted to raise here before I get to the part where I actually turn it over into almost a pitch to folks on the call and to those of you joining in on video later, is our newsletter. So for folks who haven't subscribed yet to the newsletter, we would love to have you subscribed. You can sign up on our website at uaem.org /North America. Or if you are already signed up for our listserv, you'll get this already. The first edition came out earlier this year. The second edition will come out actually by the end of this week, so long as our final editor, aka me, finishes editing the last article. But that's an exciting newsletter. It's our most read email and notice out to our list, so definitely give it a look. And it covers a lot of really great and compelling topics. And then the next piece is we have some upcoming events. So first and foremost, I want to highlight at the end of this month, and there is a typo here. At the end of this month, on July 31st, I will be joining a roundtable at the National Institutes of Health on behalf of UAEM to talk about really technology transfer and modern approaches that can be made to make sure that medicines are more affordable for patients moving forward. UAEM will be one of many voices, but you can find the details on our website. And if you have an expertise, a knowledge base, a patient experience, or others that you would like to make sure are submitted to the NIH, there is a link in there with instructions on how to do so on behalf of yourself or an organization. But yeah, we'll be working on putting together our comments and thoughts for this and then presenting that on July 31st. The next one is the typo. If you're located in the in the DC, Maryland, or Virginia, heck, maybe in Delaware too, areas, we are putting together a fundraiser, but it's not last week on July 12th. It's actually on September 12th. So if you're in the area, mark your calendars for September 12th to join us for a DC Garden Happy Hour. More details will be sent your way undoubtedly, both over email and, for those of you in the area who I have an address for, an actual physical piece of mail. So be on the lookout for that. Come join us. Tickets will start at $100 for the DC fundraising event, and we would love to have you come and really be a part of the next phase of the Access to Medicines movement. We're doing a fall training the weekend following that, /North America Leadership Meeting. That's an exciting opportunity for our members to come together, our student leaders, our recent alumni leaders, to come together to go through some workshops to build out the strategy for the next coming year. So if you're in the area, if you would like to meet up with the UAEM network, there'll be more information about that online as well. We'll, of course, want to know a little bit more about you if you want to come and join and jump in, but those will all be available in a form. And then finally, we do host an annual conference. The last few years have been digital, but we are moving to a physical location in May of 2024. And it's possibly going to be at Hopkins because the Johns Hopkins chapter, who are two of the wonderful leaders of the chapter here today, are potentially excited to host it. So we're working on the details. We'll announce the official location and everything there, but just teasing that it might be in Baltimore. So jumping right in, I know we've only got 9 minutes left here from this captive audience. I'm going to jump right in with a couple of notes on ways that folks can get involved and work with UAEM to build this next generation of leaders. First and foremost, just a quick representation of our structure. So in case you didn't know, UAEM is actually broken up into 3 global regions, and each one is its own organization. So we are UAEM North America. We also have UAEM Europe and UAEM Latin America. North America has a board of directors, has 1 staff person, myself, the executive director, and then has our North America coordinating committee, of which you're meeting about a third of tonight, which is exciting. Here's a quick snapshot of our current board of directors. This doesn't tell you much about these folks, but it's a range of attorneys, medical doctors, public health professionals, healthcare product professionals, and advocacy professionals from all over currently the US, though we also in the past have also had Canadian board members as well. But we are it's a good group. It's an exciting group to be a part of. It's an incredibly well-networked group and a group that would love to invite you in if you might be a fit for the board of directors for North America. The big pieces here is that the board of directors holds the fiscal responsibility for UAM North America, which means you can get sued. No, I'm just kidding. We have board insurance. What it actually means is that you are there to help make sure that me as the ED, the team that we're working with, we're spending money wisely, and that we're thinking about the long-term sustainability of the organization, but also thinking about partnerships and funders that can help us grow the organization and our mission. So it's your job to help us think through that, to brainstorm it, to put rules and things in place when needed, like our really straightforward conflict of interest policy that stops us from, creating a financial conflict with one of our funders and our mission. So things like that, good governance policy is really the main focus of the board of directors. But logistically, you serve a 2-year term, and you can serve up to 3 consecutive terms, so 6 years total. There's some special rules that you can go around that in our bylaws, and those all exist for a good reason, including allowing someone to serve as president after those 6 years are done, if we need it. But the board meets just 4 times a year. Currently, it's digitally, but we're moving to more of a hybrid model. Actually, our board president, Reshma Ramachandran, is here and in the chat. We're actually trying to schedule our first in-person board meeting now. So we're working on that, which is exciting. And those are the expectations on the screen. We expect board members to attend 75% or more of meetings. Even if there is an in-person meeting, there's a digital version available. We want you to attend 1 major event. And you saw 3 or 4 major events in just the next couple of months, so there are ample opportunities. Raise or donate at least $2,000 per year. If you think of it as donating, that's getting 10 of your friends to give $200 or 50 of your friends to give 40, right? It doesn't have to be a huge amount of money, or it can be a donation out of your own pocket. And then leveraging relationships, partnerships, and affiliations to advance UAM's work, of course. The process to join the board, step 1 is this. You watched this webinar, you joined us, you've connected to a board member, you've heard a little bit about UAM and what we're up to. You indicate your interest, and we have both a board nomination form, which is available on our website under the Opportunities tab. And we also have just emailing me, justin@uaem.org, and I'll just send you the board nomination form and loop in our executive committee for the board. You then can attend, you have to attend or send in a quick video to our general meeting in October, which isn't yet scheduled, but is the meeting where folks can vote on the board of directors. Board of directors is elected into our body based off of our memberships. And then the term starts on November 1st, 2023, to go 2 years. So it's a pretty straightforward process. You basically fill out a form and potentially record a video. And that's literally it in terms of the logistical pieces of it, as long as the rest fits your ability and your current needs. We would love to have folks serve. The kinds of skills we're looking for range from policy expertise and knowledge base, to which we have some brilliant minds for that as well, that you'd be joining, to organizational expertise, to financial expertise, and even human resources expertise are all critical to helping our board run and move, and to make sure that you hold your executive director accountable as you build things as well. So yes, I'm asking you to come and in part be my boss. The other two things I want to mention here are newer ideas. This one, University Alumni for Essential Medicines, is a play on words that I might get voted out of at some point, but I think it's fun. But what we want to do is revamp and restart our alumni network. UAEM's alumni network is full of more than 400 people just in North America that I have emails of, probably thousands when you combine the folks that we don't have contact information from, who are former members of chapters, maybe just folks who attended a few events and jumped in the early days. But really, it's a range from folks who are here on this call who are working in their own professions, doing great things in the legal, medical, public health spaces, all the way to big tech venture capitalists and investors who are out there as well. And it's a massive range. There's also physical therapists, and I think there's at least one gymnast. Like it's all over. So we're excited to bring folks together and really try to think about how we can utilize and work together to maybe even start alumni chapters tied to the university that you graduated with or have an affiliation to digitally all over the country, who can help us think through how to pressure universities from the alumni network itself, rather than only from the student perspective. It can give us another additional layer of connectivity. And also, sometimes you hear about UAM when you're graduating, and then you wonder, what the heck do you do after you graduate? And this gives an opportunity, we think, to stay connected and build part of the network. So there's more details on that, and I'll share those with folks, but you can jump in and sign up for our alumni listserv if you haven't already at uaem.org. And then finally, the last pitch I have to bring to you all, the UAEM Innovation Fund. We just started fundraising for this, and I'm happy to report that we've raised just over $5,000 already towards this goal. But basically right now, university priorities when it comes to innovation are tied to what's most profitable in the pharmaceutical world, which is never diseases for low-income populations. It's never rare diseases that affect populations that are outside of the US and lower middle income countries, nor is it often populations within the US that are not more spread out or diverse, right? Or sorry, not even diverse, not the majority, right? Minority populations are sometimes the kind of back burner of biomedical research. And part of the reason for that is, of course, where the funds come from. Of course, profitability moves some funding into research, but a lot of funding comes from the public, right? It comes from taxpayer dollars, it comes from the National Institutes of Health and others. And one of the things that we've noticed that's missing, and well, I won't give you the whole anecdote, but one of the things that we've noticed that's missing is that also there's often a lack of opportunity as a student to research in labs that are addressing the world's most neglected health needs. So because there's not many labs doing research on antimicrobial resistance, you might not have an opportunity to go and study about things that can actually tackle antimicrobial resistance unless you're at a handful of institutions around the US. Same goes for things like Chagas disease or any neglected tropical disease. You might be unable to find a PI who can research under while you're an undergraduate or even a PhD student. And our UAEM Innovation Fund will produce grants to help sustain students and give them an opportunity to study under those research labs that are experts in these fields of neglected diseases and neglected health needs. We'll be launching this next summer if we're able to successfully raise our first $100,000 in seed funding to build. We're 5% there, which is exciting because we only launched this campaign last week. And we'll be building and raising the funds so that we can launch our first round of UAEM Innovation Fellows and start to shape the course of research when it comes to neglected health needs. And this is just a little bit of a breakdown of how we'll spend that $100,000. This can be available afterwards to folks, though, as well. But essentially, we're thinking 10 awards for the first round of Innovation Fellows with some open access support as well, so that we can publish in open access journals, because so much research is locked up behind paywalls. And really importantly, of course, to hit our sustainability point, we do need to administer the program, which especially in the first year will be a lot of administrative costs that we don't currently have baked in, since this will be brand new. But it's something really exciting to be a part of, and another opportunity to get involved if you don't have the time for the board of directors or the interest or time for the alumni network. You can be part of the seed funding for the UAEM Innovation Fund, and all three of these will help us transform the world in access to medicines. So that's our time. I'm going to stop the screen share and stop the recording so that if anyone does want to stay on for a couple minutes after, I'm happy to take questions, and maybe some of our presenters can as well. But we will just want to say thank you all for joining us. Thank you for jumping in and chatting here with myself and with my co-presenters tonight. And thank you so much to the presenters for being on as well. So this is nothing else I'd rather be doing with my Tuesday night. So I'm glad that all of you are here too.